Hey guys! Since you asked, I wanted to give a brief overview of my playstyle for ranged or caster mistweaving in dungeons, specifically Mythic Plus. As always, I just want to make clear, this is how I play, this is what works for me, and I'm sure there are plenty of other ways to do it. For the most part, I'm a ranged healer who plays in close quarters, since that's currently where I need to be if I want to interrupt and do damage. If you're just starting out, you might not want to deal with melee mechanics that force you to dodge frontals and run away all the time, and that's fine. Depending on your group's DPS and overall skill and coordination, I'd say you don't need to do DPS at all until you're looking at going beyond 15s, and that'll change as people get more gear. Don't let tanks and DPS who take millions in avoidable damage tell you that a lack of healer DPS is what's holding them back. So the talents are pretty straightforward. I use the same as my raiding build, down to the last point. If you're playing true ranged Mistweaver and frequently channeling Soothing Mist, you might ditch the Tiger statue in favor of Serpent, maybe even take something like Clouded Focus or Mist Wrap over Refreshing Jade Wind. When you're going into boss fights, pulls, or any big damage events where you're not familiar with the damage patterns, keeping both Renewing Mists circulating and having Soothing Mist channeled on the tank or the target of any damage can put you in a pretty strong position to react quickly to incoming damage. Tank healing is mostly just a cast of Enveloping Mist and then however many Vivify casts are needed to top them off. If your tank needs significant healing for more than a few seconds at a time, you'll have to refresh Enveloping Mist once every 6 seconds, or 7 if you talent into Mist Wrap. The complexity of tank healing comes from choosing just how much you want to amplify that healing. If you use Enveloping Mist to trigger Thunder Focus Tea, it heals for a large amount initially, which is a great way to react to the tank's health if it suddenly spikes. On top of that, Secret Infusion would reward that choice with 10 seconds of plus 15 crit, which is also nice. Then there's Bone Dust Brew, which isn't super easy to land or to aim when there's a lot going on. If you can at least get it on the tank, that's 10 seconds where any healing you do has a 50% chance to trigger a second time at half value. If you can hit more than one player with it, that's even better. But do keep an eye out for Bountiful Brew procs. Despite the total randomness of that talent, sometimes they do happen exactly when and where you need them. If you're talented into Upwelling, channeling Essence Font for even a couple seconds should cover your whole group in a heal over time for the next 12 seconds. During that time, most of your heals proc Mastery twice on those people. Sometimes any extra healing can make a difference. If you're in the second phase on the third boss in Jade on a 19 Tyrannical, your tank's probably getting beat within an inch of his life, so this might save him. When it comes to group healing, everything I said about Bone Dust Brew, Secret Infusion, and Upwelling still counts. Not counting your bigger cooldowns, most of your healing comes from Enveloping Mist and Vivify. You can normally keep 2 Renewing Mists circulating so that each Vivify heals 2 to 3 targets, but thanks to Rapid Diffusion, each time you cast Enveloping Mist or Rising Sun Kick, you proc a 6-second Renewing Mist on someone else. That means if you're quick, you can cast 2 Enveloping Mists and a Rising Sun Kick, or minus the kick if you're at range, and then spend your instant Vivify proc to hit 4 or 5 people with it. In most cases you won't need to hit all 5 at once, but it's nice to know you can. For bosses, mini-bosses, and ugly trash pulls, Revival usually isn't enough to fix things. Maybe it will be after the next patch, when they double its healing outside of raid groups, but until then, unless it does the exact amount of healing you need at that moment, you probably are going to have to go right back to spamming heals as soon as you hit that button. Yu'lon is surprisingly effective though. Even if all I do while it's up is go down the list casting Enveloping Mist on each person, that's a lot of healing. Assuming you have your Renewing Mists circulating by the time you cast Yu'lon, you can do a lot with the first Vivify during or after. If you're talented into Invoker's Delight, every time you cast Yu'lon, you should get a massive haste buff for 8 seconds, which is enough to handle most major events like Hyjal's Eye of the Storm or Melidrusa's Frost Overload. One last thing about healing. Unlike in raids, there just aren't a lot of situations where channeling an entire Essence Font is worth it, unless you're between fights or in no hurry at all. It might sound mana efficient to let it cast all the way, but if there's actual healing needed to be done, the only way it does enough to make a difference is if the entire group has Enveloping Breath on them, and even then, a couple casts of Vivify could do so much more. Now I'll quickly go over how I DPS in this playstyle. Since we don't have any real options when it comes to ranged DPS, I go into melee during downtime and do one of two things. If we're fighting a single target and there are no distractions, I can do the basic melee rotation. That's Rising Sun Kick on cooldown and triple Tiger Palm with Blackout Kick the rest of the time. Spirit of the Crane gives mana back whenever our Tiger Palms trigger extra Blackout Kicks, so this is also a good way to regen mana if you need to. What I like is when I can DPS on large packs, like the Trash Before Granith in Aku Defensive. Just as Bone Dust Brew and Secret Infusion amplify healing, they can also amplify DPS, and if you use the haste buff from Yulon offensively, you can do a lot more damage in a shorter time. Put all this together, and on AoE packs, I've done anywhere from 20 to 70k DPS, which makes my DPS contribution look way better at the end of the key. In the group I run keys with, it's pretty rare that I go full DPS for more than a few seconds on occasion, but when I do, I'll try and at least hit Rising Sun Kick on cooldown and spam Spinning Crane Kick the rest of the time. Keeping it simple makes it easier to watch health bars and bounce back into healing mode as soon as something goes wrong. But again, as long as you're healing, you're doing your job. So hopefully some of this is useful. Again, I tried to cover everything I'd want to know if I was just starting out, but I'm sure there's a lot I missed or underexplained. Let me know in the comments what you think, or what you do differently that works for you. I'm planning on making a few shorter videos soon, basically notes on each dungeon, where I'll cover which cooldowns I use and when, what mistakes people make that healers end up forced to clean up, and where I feel our limited utility gives us the most control. Nothing game-changing, just things I wish I'd thought of, or read about, or paid attention to sooner. Until then, thanks for watching, and have a good one.